Welcome. I am Dr. Meet. The poem we are going to discuss today is England in 1819 by P.B. Shelley. The poem is prescribed in the syllabus of BSc Semester 1. Let's begin by getting ourselves acquainted with the poet. P.B. Shelley, 1792 to 1822, was a second generation English romantic poet. He was born in a rich aristocratic family of England. His father was a parliamentarian. He was educated at Sion House Academy, where he was from 1802 to 1804, and then he went to Eton, where he stayed from 1804 to 10. In 1810, Shelley entered University College, Oxford. A year later, he was expelled for publishing provocative pamphlet, The Necessity of Atheism. He often defied social norms, and it was an embarrassment for his parents, who refused to support him. He secretly married Harriet Westbrook, who was minor at that time, and the wedlock was not approved by his father. After Harriet's death, he married Mary Godwin, daughter of famous political thinker William Godwin. In 1818, Shelley left England. He went to Italy, where he stayed till his death. He was drowned in a tragic boat accident. His boat sank in a stormy weather, and he was hardly 30 when he died, so he died very young. Shelley was basically a visionary and an idealist with a passion to change the world. The ideals that governed his ideology were love, justice, and freedom. He was in revolt against all established authority, be it political, religious, or social. He had radical views on politics as well as other matters like marriage and love. He is a poet of romantic movement. In fact, he is the poet of second generation romantic movement. The first generation poets were Wordsworth and Coleridge. His poetry is poetry of dreams and imagination. It's full of abstractions, and it's the poetry of ideas and of ideals. And the ideals are that of beauty, love, and liberty. His poetry reflects the spirit of rebellion, his idealism, and his vision of a world where all those ideals would be realized. Some of his important works are Queen Mab, The Revolt of Islam, Prometheus Unbound, but more popular are his lyrics, and he is a great lyricist of English language. Some of his lyrics are Ode to West Wind, The Cloud, To a Skylark, Hymn to Intellectual Beauty, Ode to Liberty. He also wrote pamphlets on political and social issues. For all his commitment to romantic ideals of love and beauty, Shelley was also concerned with the real world. He was a passionate advocate for liberty and a harsh critic of the arrogance of power. The result of his political commitment was a series of political poems, and England in 1819 is one of those poems. It is explicitly political poem and depicts the political and social order of his time and his sharp criticism of that order. Before we move on to the poem England in 1819, let's have a look at an important historical event which came to be known as Peterloo. On 16 August 1819, in St. Peter's Field, Manchester, the army was deployed to scatter the peaceful protest taking place. The protest was over issues of electoral reforms. In 1819, very few men had the right to vote in England, and no women could. There was also widespread hunger and poverty because economy was in very bad shape. During this action, 11 people were killed and over 400 were injured. Shortly after news of this horrific event broke out, Shelley began writing a number of poems in response to the Peterloo massacre. Peterloo is in fact a combination of two words. One is St. Peter's, another Waterloo, that refers to the British victory over the Napoleon's army just 4 years earlier. And the most famous of these poems is The Mask of Anarchy, although England in 1819 also contains allusion to Peterloo. England in 1819 is a sonnet, and here are the first 6 lines of the poem. An old, mad, blind, despised, and dying king Princes, the dregs of their dull rays, who flow through the public scorn, mud from the muddy spring, rulers who neither see nor feel nor know, but leech-like to their fainting country cling, till they drop blind in blood without a blow. So, an old, mad, blind, despised, and dying king. Now, here, of course, king is the king of England at that time. That was 1819, and it was George III who was enthroned. And he was old, um, and he was dying. And he is also referred to as mad because he was showing signs of mental instability, and he is called blind. Now, why blind? Because he is not capable of seeing, not physically, but he is not capable of seeing what is happening around him. He was not paying attention to, or he was not able to see what was happening around him in his kingdom, what was the state of his kingdom, what was the state of his people, what was the state of the economy of his country. He was totally blind to it. So blind here is more in the metaphorical sense that he is not able to see what is happening around him, and therefore he is despised. He is hated by his people. He was in fact very unpopular at that time, and the people did not like him, and therefore when Shelley describes him, he uses um, adjective after adjective that is negative, and it also shows not only the contempt people felt for King George III, but also Shelley's contempt for the king that was enthroned. But he was also somehow very strong critic of the institution of monarchy. So Shelley, it also reflects his contempt towards the very institution of monarchy, of kings and queens. And now this king, who is old, mad, blind, and hated by people, is dying. But his dying would not liberate his kingdom or England from the clutches of monarchy or bad rule. Why? Because after king there are princes. And what are the princes here? Again he describes them. Princes, the dregs of their dull race. Now, what are the dregs? It's the part of something that is considered unimportant or unwanted. This is a residue, especially if you are having, for example, a drink or a liquid, the part which settles at the bottom. So, unimportant and residue and unwanted and not good one. So, princes, the dregs of their dull race. Now, they are part of a race, they are part of an heritage, or they are part of a lineage, and there have been kings before, and what he calls them, dull race. It was a dull race, and they are the successors of that dull race, the dregs, the leftovers. So the bad leftovers of a dull race. Again, it's negative after negative, who flow through public scorn. Again, people hate them. Contempt. There is a contempt or disdain for them, because even the princes were not behaving as they should be. It was not only the king who was hated, but also the princes. Why? Because the princes also at that time were indulging in all kinds of pleasures, and they were living in luxury, and they had the habits which were highly immoral, and highly, they were spending extravagantly, and they were not paying attention to the kingdom. So these princes are also not good example of the rulers, and they are also hated by the public. So that's why he says, who flow through the public scorn. Now this is the image of spring flowing, mud from a muddy spring. Now what is spring? A place from where water flows naturally from the ground. So it is the original source of that water. So it flows. But Generally, when we talk of a spring, we think of a very clear water. But here he says mud from a muddy spring. Now, the origin is muddy, that is the race or the whole lineage of these kings have been muddy, dirty, not very clean, and they are the mud of that muddy spring because they also come from that spring, and so they are also not good ones. They are also as bad as their predecessors were. So he says that we don't have any hope. We have the ruler who is already there, is in bad shape. He is old, mad, blind, and dying. But his death would not be a kind of a relief for them, because then there will be princes who will be carrying on the legacy that Queen would leave. So what these three lines tell us, he refers to George III, who was enthroned in 1819. The poet calls the king old, mad, blind, despised, and dying. He is hated by the people. The problem is, under the current system, the only thing to replace him with when he dies is a continuing monarchy under the king's son, who is not expected to improve matters for England. It is not just the king who is useless, but the princes are too. When the king dies, nothing is going to change. It offers no hope for future. The same type of leadership is lined up for the next generations. They are the dregs of the aristocracy. They are mud and are constantly scorned by the public. They are part of the muddy stream of royalty and are no better than their predecessors. Here are the next three lines. Rulers who neither see nor feel nor know, but leech-like to their fainting country cling, till they drop blind in blood without a blow. Now here in these three lines, in the previous lines he has talked about the king and the princes. Now he talks about the rulers. Everybody, of course, part of it is the kings and princes also, but perhaps the nobility or the court and the other parts of government institutions, the rulers who are ruling this country, how they are described. They can neither see nor feel nor know. Now, there is a kind of frustration also seems here, and the poet is saying that they are not able to see what is happening around it. They cannot see what bad shape their country is in, what kind of a crisis their country is in, what is the state of economy is there, what are the sufferings of their people. No, they just don't see it, and they don't understand it. Now, what are the rulers supposed to do it? If we look at it from that point of view, and interestingly, in this poem, Shelley, what he does is presents to us that all institutions of the land are not doing what they are expected to do. So rulers are supposed to rule the country, to administer, and they are supposed to first notice what people need or what is wrong, and to understand their needs and their sufferings, and also be sympathetic, to feel for them. But here are the rulers who are totally ignorant of what is happening, because they cannot see and understand, but also totally indifferent to the sufferings of its people. They are not even bothered what their people are going through, and that's why perhaps they cannot see or know. Because if they were concerned, or they were bothered about their people, they would definitely try to know and understand what was the state of affairs. So the poet here is, of course, feels almost frustrated that what kind of rulers we have, that they are not able to see or understand what is happening, and they have no feelings for their people, and rather they are doing the opposite. And what are they doing? And the poet again picks up the metaphor of leech, that leech like to their fainting country cling. No, a leech is a blood-sucking parasite which clings to your body, and it sucks blood out of that body, and it keeps on sucking that blood till it is drunk with blood, and then when it's drunk with blood, it falls off the body. Now, these rulers are in fact like leeches. They are not doing anything for their country. Rather, they are sucking its blood. They are sucking uh, whatever there is in the system, the resources or the riches that have been created, not by these people, because they are leeches, they are parasites. These the resources of the country or the riches have been created by the common people, the labor, the workers, and what they are doing, they are just feeding upon that. And so rulers, they are feeding upon that so much that they are drunk with it, and finally they are going to drop without a blow, that you don't even need to strike them. They just will fall off on their own because they would be too drunk with blood. So what he is trying to say, that the rulers have fattened themselves by feeding on the blood of the common people. And as we know that England was in deep economic crisis at the time, and the rulers were spending lavishly and doing opposite of what they should be, or what they were expected to do. Rather, they were just taking care of themselves, not even taking care of themselves. They were just indulging in all kinds of luxuries while their country was going through a deep economic crisis. So what these three lines tell us: the rulers of England do not understand their own country. They do not even pay attention to what the people need or want. They do not have any feelings and sympathy for their own people. They have careless attitude towards the common people and the problems the country was facing. The poet criticizes the rulers for their ignorance of their suffering realm. He calls these princes leeches and accuses that they suck the country dry. Growing overfull, they can drop simply from their own engorged weight. No blow is necessary to bring them down. Like blood-sucking parasites, they spend and waste the wealth created by the labor of the common people. Here are the next four lines. A people starved and stabbed in the untilled field, an army whom liberty sighed and prayed, makes as a two-edged sword to all who wield golden and sanguine laws which tempt and slay. Now here the poet further paints the picture of England in 1819. So we have come to know of the king, the princes, the rulers, and now here we see the victims, the people of the country, because they are getting affected by their behavior. A people starved. Starved means dying of hunger. Now we know that England was in bad shape. The economy of England was in very bad shape, and whenever there is any kind of crisis or calamity, be it natural or economic or social, be it riots or floods or economic crisis, the worst impact is on the poor of the land. And the common people, the poor people, are getting starved. They are dying of hunger. Now, on the one hand, they are dying of hunger. On the other hand, are stabbed in the untilled field. Now they are dying of hunger also. There is reference here, untilled field. Perhaps it is reference to the field where that gathering has happened before Peterloo. Also because of the corn laws, many fields were kept uncultivated. So people were in fact dying of hunger because of that. So the people are dying of hunger on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are being killed. Stab means to injure or kill somebody with a sharp instrument, and the people are being killed. They are being attacked, and reference, of course, here is to the Peterloo massacre, and where the common people were attacked and killed by the army. And he refers to army in the next lines. An army whom liberty side and prey makes as a two-edged sword to all who wield. Now, what is the army doing? It's also again same reference that Shelley is hinting at, that institutions are not doing what they should be. Now, what is an army expected to do? An army is expected to protect its people. Not only protect its people, but rights of its people and liberty of a nation and liberty of the people of that nation. But what is that army doing here? An army whom liberty side and prey. Liberty side, murder of liberty, like matricide, murder of mother, patricide, murder of brother. So again, liberty side means murder of liberty. So what is army doing here? Rather than protecting the liberty and rights of the people, it is in fact becoming an instrument in suppressing and ending their liberties and suppressing their rights. And prey. Prey means hunt or kill. Rather than protecting those people, now army is supposed to protect the people from the enemy outside, but here the army itself has become enemy and is killing, hunting and killing people. The reference, of course, here is to Peterloo, but here is a warning also. And what is the warning? He says, makes it a two-edged sword, the sword which can turn in both ways, which can, if on the one hand, it can kill the people and who swore to all who wield. Wield means the person, the hands who are using it, taking an instrument and using it. So the people, and who are the people? Of course, the rulers of the country are using army to suppress the people and take away their liberties and take away their rights. But here is the warning by the poet that army may turn against the rulers one day. It's not if it can attack the people, it's the possibility also that it may turn against the rulers, because seeds of revolts are within the system itself. So it can happen that the army may one day rise in revolt against the government or the rulers. So it's a kind of a warning. Golden and sanguine laws which tempt and slay. So now people are in bad shape. They are dying of hunger. They are being killed. Army is not doing what it should be doing. It's killing the liberty of the people, hunting and killing people. And laws which are again supposed to protect people. They should be made for the welfare of the people. Laws are the rules which somehow maintain the justice, system of justice within that country, may somehow protect the rights and liberties of the people, and they somehow try to protect those liberties and rights, and work for or make the governments responsible and work for the welfare of the people. So laws are supposed to do that. But what are the laws doing here? They are not protecting the rights of the people, or they are not working for the welfare of the people. They are golden laws. They look golden. They appear good, but they are sanguine laws. They are bloody laws. They are exploitative laws which tempt and slay, which kill. They tempt, which rather than preventing the exploitation of the people, in fact tempt or encourage. And who are getting encouraged? Of course, the rich people, the people in the power. The institutions of power are in fact get protection from these laws, because these laws favor the powerful and the rich, and they exploit the common people, the poor people. So the government does not take care of its poor. The common people and the workers are dying of hunger. They are attacked and killed in the uncultivated fields by the army. The reference here is to Peterloo massacre. The liberty of the people is crushed by the very army that is supposed to protect it. Shelley warns that this may prove to be a double-edged sword for those who control it. The army that is used to suppress dissent and repress rights may also turn against its rulers. The people are further repressed by the laws. They benefit the rich and the powerful. The laws encourage exploitation of the poor and lead to bloodshed. Next two lines talk about other institutions. So first line is about religion, Christless, godless, a book sealed, a Senate times verse statue unrepealed. Now first line he talks about the religion. Now religion, of course, he's talking about Christianity, and here he says religion Christless, Christianity that is without Christ. So how can be there can there be Christianity without Christ? Because Christ is the central figures. It's the meaning of Christianity. So what does it mean that people who call themselves Christians or religious people are not following what Christ told them to do? They are not following the teachings of Christ. And it has become godless because they are not bothered, or they are not interested in the things which religion tells them to do, like kindness, generosity, love. No, they have become godless. They are interested in other things, worldly things, in power, and they indulge in violence. So the religion has got corrupted. It's not what it should be. It has lost its meaning. It's because it's not following its own principles and teachings. And a book sealed, the book is closed. Maybe religion as a book closed because it's not following its own principles, or the Bible, because nobody opens it, nobody reads it, nobody follows what is written out there. So religion is totally corrupt, in bad shape, is not following the teachings which are there in Bible, or which is the essence of Christianity. A Senate, now here references to the Parliament of England, times verse statute, law, unrepealed, unreformed. And Senate, the Parliament of England, stands for, again it stands for the corrupt or unjust ways, because it is the worst law passed by the time. Time here is of course personified, and it is the worst times worst statute. The worst law that time has passed. The very existence of Parliament is questioned here, because it does not work in favor of common people. The representatives here are the rich people. They are the representatives of the rich and aristocracy, and they are not bothered about the common people and the poor, and therefore it needs to be reformed, but it has not been reformed. So therefore this is the times verse statute. So here till now, till this sentence, these lines, up to now, Shelley has in fact painted a very, very dismal picture of the society of his time, or order of his time. So it seems that everything is designed in a way to favor the rich, to favor the powerful, to oppress and exploit the common people. But he ends this poem with his typical optimism, hope. And what is the hope? He says that these institutions are graves from which a glorious phantom may burst to illumine our tempestuous day. Illumine, to light up, tempestuous, violent or stormy. Now we may be in very bad shape. In darkness, maybe there's a lot of violence, lots of tempest. There is tempest all around. There is disturbance all around, and things do not seem nice. But all these institutions that represent oppression, tyranny, exploitation, Shelley calls them that they are graves, because already he has hinted that such a system has its seeds of its own destructions. So they are already dead because they are corrupt. They are not in favor, or they don't work for the common people. So they are not going to survive long, and they are graves. And from those graves which rise, burst out, what a glorious phantom. Phantom is a ghost or a spirit. Now here again we are reminded of Holy Ghost and the idea of resurrection, where Christ again coming to life after he was buried. So like him, because that was also a beginning of new religion, or beginning of new era, or a faith. Here again it would be a beginning of a new era, that this spirit perhaps of liberty and equality would come bursting out of the graves of these institutions. So these institutions will be the bed for the growth of, or for coming of the new age, the age which would represent, or which would have the kind of order which Shelley dreams of, or which was ideal of Shelley, which would, when there would be equality, liberty and justice around, when human beings will be considered equal. So from these very graves, that phantom would rise, that spirit of liberty would rise, and that spirit of liberty, that hope of new era, will finally give light and illumine these very violent and stormy times we are living in. So here this poem ends with on a tone of, or on a note. So what do the last lines of this poem say? Religion is not what it is expected to be. It has become godless, Christless. Christianity has lost its very essence. The Bible is sealed and shut as it is not read. Nobody follows the teachings of Bible. Two principles of religion are not applied. Shelley also attacks Parliament, calling it time's worst statue that needs to be reformed but remains unreformed. Though every institution of the land is corrupt, exploitative, and oppressive, the poem ends at a note of prophetic optimism. All of the institutions mentioned so far are the grave, and a glorious phantom of revolution is going to come bursting out of it. The old unjust order contains the seeds of its own destruction. Out of the old order will emerge the new order. So here is a brief recap of what we have done. The poem paints political and economic conditions of England in 1819. It is a scathing attack on the prevailing political order. Shelley denounces the king, princes and rulers of his time. They were indifferent to the sufferings of the poor. They fattened themselves on the blood of the common people. They lived in luxury while the country was suffering from economic instability. They did nothing for the welfare of the people. The laws of the land also favored the rich. Army attacks its own people. Other institutions like parliament and religion were also corrupt. In spite of all this, Shelley had a hope for a better future. He hoped that out of this rotten order would emerge a new order. It would usher in a new era of equality, liberty, and justice for all. Now let's talk a bit about the structure and form of the poem. The poem is a sonnet. A sonnet is a 14-line poem, and the rhyme scheme of this sonnet is A B A B A B. These are the first six lines, the sustain, and then it is C D C D C C D D. So these are the last 8 lines, or octave, if we can call it. Now this octave can further be divided into CD CD part, 1/4, and then CC, and then DD. Now this sonnet is obviously does not follow the structure of English sonnet. It's not exactly a Shakespearean sonnet, but it reminds us of a Petrarchan sonnet, because the octave and sestet scheme is upside down. So there is the sestet is first is the octave, and then the sestet. Here it is the opposite of it. And it seems that by changing the structure of the poem, the poet wants to show the bad and the chaotic state of England was in 1819. Now here are a few figures of speech that have been used in this poem. Alliteration, that is the repetition of consonant sounds in nearby words. There is an extensive use of alliteration in this poem. The despised, dying, dregs, dirty, blood, blind, especially in these words, poet uses the plosives and we or the d sound that has a harshness about him, and this it is used to bring out the harsh reality about the kings and the princes. Then there is repetition, like especially in this sentence on who neither see nor feel nor know, and there is a certain, it emphasizes the idea of the indifference of the ruler and also the poet's frustration about this situation. Then there are metaphors, and dregs are used for princes, leech for the rulers, and mud, again mud of the Medi Springs for the princes, or Sanet times verse statue it is called. So these are the devices that have been used in this poem. Here are a few questions for your practice. Why is the King George III despised? Why are the princes called the dregs of the dull race? What does mud from a muddy spring mean? Who is compared to leech? Why is the country fainting? Why does the poet call army a two-edged sword? What is the theme of the poem? Explain the following golden and sanguine laws. Glorious phantom. The poem is a political satire. Comment. The poem expresses Shelley's anger at the pathetic condition of England in 1819. Elaborate. Please do try these questions, and if you are not able to answer any of them, please do get in touch. Thank you.